Hi everyone, welcome back. Well, it's another beautiful sunny day here on Brookdale farm, and we're just doing a bit of fencing today. And I thought I would just run through how to build a box strainer properly. Now this is a box strainer mechanism here, and these are really good, strong ways and cheap ways to end your fence lines to stop your strainer post pulling out. So this is the main strainer post here. We've got a cocky gate going that way. We've got our main fence running down this way. If we just have the strainer post without anything else on it to hold it upright, it'll work for a little while, but gradually your fence will pull the strainer post over and you will lose all the tension in your fence, and then your animals start getting through. So to help stabilize the strainer post, we use this box mechanism. We've got a strut down this end and we've got this timber bar across the top. Now timber is really good in compression. You can't compress timber. And we've also got this diagonal wire which goes back to the bottom of the main strainer post. This wire here is pulled up tight. The bottom of the strainer post is not going to move. This wire holds the top of this post to stop it falling away that way. This bar across the top then holds the top of this post to stop it moving. So because this is here, this post can't lean over that way. We've got the diagonal back down onto here, but it's not going to pull the bottom across, so the diagonal wire stays tight. That's basically how these work. This is not the only way that you can do strainer assemblies at the end of your fence lines. There's plenty of other ways, including a strut that just goes down to the ground, and steel posts and concrete and all of that stuff. This is a really simple way to do it, and you don't need too many consumables that you can't just find on your farm anyway. So we'll go down to where I'm putting in the new one and we'll start assembling it. How do we dig post holes? Well, the tools that I often use are a shovel and crowbar, and the crowbar I usually use has a flat thumper end on one end of it. I left that one at home today, unfortunately. I thought it was over here. But that's very important to have one of them. The other thing, if you're lucky enough to have a tractor with a 3-point linkage and a post hole digger on it, that's great, use that. If you don't have quite enough money for that, these old hand post hole diggers here actually work really well. They're slow and it takes a bit of time, but I've dug most of my post holes for my fencing with this one. This was old when I got it, and it's still really old, but it's still working. The other thing that's really handy to have is a bucket of water. So in hard ground, dig a bit of a hole, throw a bucket of water in, go away and come back later, have another go at it with the crowbar and the shovel and that, and you'll gradually get to where you need to be. You don't need, if you're only doing a small amount of fencing, you don't need to spend the money on a 3-point linkage tractor operated post hole digger. Now I've already dug the 2 post holes. This hole here is going to be our strainer post, and you want these to be as close to 900 millimeters deep as you can get them. The post for the strut doesn't need to be quite as deep. You only need to put them down about 600 millimeters because this doesn't have as much load on it as the main strainer post. Now I'm using second-hand posts here today because that's what I've got lying around. Now which way do you put a post in the ground? Most people put them with the fat end in the ground, so the bottom end of the tree in the ground and top end of the tree still pointing the right way up. So the tree is still basically the right way up. An old farmer told me that if you put them in upside down, so the tree is upside down, your posts last a lot longer. The reason for this is that the central part of the tree that takes the moisture up to the leaves when the tree is alive still will suck moisture up through the post even long after the tree is dead. If you put it in upside down, the moisture doesn't get sucked backwards, so it stops your post being moist and wet inside all the time. I don't know if this is true or not. I'd love to hear your comments about if anybody else has heard this. So we want about 1200 millimeters of post sticking out of the ground, and we want the depth of our post in the ground, so that makes these posts just a little bit over 2 meters, 2.1 meters long. This is Jarrah. We've got a lot of Wandoo growing around here, and these make great posts, other than they're slightly heavier than steel, and I can barely lift a post that's 2.1 meters long. You can also use pine arsenic logs. They're great, they're soft, you can pick them up. I can easily lift a big pine post. They're not so good in fire, but if you've got a fire going through, that's probably the least of your worries. So we're going to stand this post up now and start getting it into the ground. Now, when we start filling in our post holes, it's really important to throw in a bit of dirt, and then using that flat top rammer on the crowbar, pack the dirt in really tight in your hole as you're going. Don't put too much in. There's no point filling the hole right up and then trying to ram it down. You don't get the post seated in the ground particularly well that way. So a little bit of dirt, and then ram it down. Make sure your post is upright. I forgot to bring the spirit level today, but they don't work particularly well on posts that aren't straight anyway. So just eyeball that off. I'm going to start filling this in now and ramming it down. Okay, so we've got our strainer post in now. When you're done, if you can end up with a slight rise around your post, so rather than having a hollow there, it helps shed the water away from your post and stops your post rotting off just down at ground level where all the water sits. So yeah, make sure you fill your hole right up with just a little bit of a rise to shed the water away from your post. Okay, so the next thing we want to do is lay our rail out on the ground, our top rail out on the ground, and cut it to length, so we've got it the right length. This length here isn't critical. I normally make it between 2 and 2.5 meters. If you make it too short, the mechanics of the box strainer don't work very well. If you make it too long, your top rail can bow over time and you lose your strength out of your box strainer. Now, to hold it up in the right spot, I've drilled a hole in this post and put a pin in. Usually I use about a 1/2 inch piece of rod in here, and you want it going a reasonable way in and sticking out 50-75 mils, something like that. And then I drill a hole in that end of the post that will just slip over this rod, and that's what holds it in place. If you're ever down round Bailing Up or Malully Up in Western Australia, stop and have a look at some of the box strainers down there. Somebody has taught all the locals, and they do beautiful tenon joints to hold the top rail up into the top of the post, and it looks really neat, but it's a bit beyond my skill level with a chainsaw. So the next thing to do is to stand that other post up, put the top rail in, and then we can fill in that hole and tamp that down as well. Okay, the next thing we need to do is put the wire bracing that goes from the top of this post to the bottom of our strainer post. Now there's a number of ways that people do this. I've seen a lot of people hammer a U-nail in and thread the wire through. I just put a cut in with the chainsaw and wrap the wire around there. I normally put 2 rounds of wire on, and then I like to use these gripples to join it. If you don't want to go out and buy a packet of gripples, that's fine, you can just use a wire strainer. But these are great. They've got 2 holes. They've got, you don't use the bit with the blue, you use the plain hole. So they've got a hole in either end, and they've got a little ratchet mechanism in there. So you thread the wire in, and it goes in that way, but it won't come back out again. And then there's a special tool for tensioning up the wire using these, and it makes the job so easy. Okay, so this funny looking tool here is the gripple tool. Once we've got the gripple on the wire, it sits in here like this. The wire comes through here and then through this alligator jaw here. So when we move the handles back together, the wire slides through the jaw, and so it's tight in here, and then as we pull on it, it pulls through the gripple and the gripple ratchets it up tight. When we've finished, if we pull the handles really hard, it opens up that jaw for us and we can remove the tool. So I'm going to put the gripple on now. These do have little arrows, little tiny arrows on to tell you which way to put the wire through them. So slide the wire in like that, and then in the other side. And then that's locked in, so I can already just pull on that and it won't slip back through the gripple. So to put the gripple tool on, we open it up so that wire goes through there, and then we just work away on the handle. And this one's a little bit rusty and needs a little bit of oil on it, just to make it slide a little bit more easily. And we just keep working like that, and it gradually pulls our wire up tight. And we want a reasonable amount of tension on this wire, but don't overdo it. You actually can start pulling your posts over if you do this wire up too tight. So I normally give it a bit of a tug like that. That just helps equalise out the different strands of wire. And we can pull our gripple up a little bit tighter. And that's pretty good. Once we're done with these don't usually slip, but every now and then they do. And just to make it nice and neat, particularly if you've got horses or something you don't want to hurt themselves on the sharp ends, we wrap the wire, both ends of the wire around, and then we just twist and break it off like that. Now this does mean that you can't come back and tighten it up later, but it means there's no sharp edges there for any of your animals to get caught on. So there we have our new box strainer all ready to tie the fence onto. So the pressure of the fence is going that way. There will be a cocky gate on this side going over to the other post over there. They're quite simple to make, and there's not really any, you can generally cut all of this material off your farm. If you've got posts and stuff, you can cut out of the trees, and most farms have got fencing wire lying around. So that's why I like these. It doesn't really cost anything to build them. Anyway, thank you very much for watching. I hope you found this useful, and I hope to see you again next time. Thanks, bye.